Welcome to Raging Bullets, a comics fan podcast, Season 2, Episode 774.
Sean and Jim are back again, talking comic books with all their friends.
They'll spoil a story and break it down. These two guys talking comics are the best around. Raging Bullets,
The podcast show.
Raging Bullets,
The podcast show.
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the Minister of More Gooder, has taken on the name of Censor since drinking a bad batch of Kool-Aid and is plotting our demise as we record this. And of course, he is the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are going to finish up the last part of Turtles of Grayskull with issues number 3 and 4. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, I threw in some search criteria. Tried the MOTU for Master of the Universe, and I also tried Master, just the word Master. And each one gave a lot of really cool stuff going on with the the Turtle crossover, but also just the general Masters of the Universe action figures, comic books, and whatnot that they've got going on. With the Turtles of Grayskull action figures you're looking for, Sean, I would recommend using Turtles or Grayskull as your search criteria, because that'll really focus in on the action figures that you're looking for. But if you're out there looking for just general stuff beyond that, that search function is really good. In that it's a nice search engine showing comic books, showing action figures. Some of the stuff have some great discounts. Some of them have some solid pricing. So DCBS, once again, is taking care of us. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, I actually did the same thing you did. I did a search for Masters of the Universe. Oh my gosh, is there a lot of content there. From everything from the Revelation series to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, various trade paperbacks. There's an Art of Masters of the Universe, 2 different volumes of the Art of Masters of the Universe. There's just a lot of content. You can also, this is something that's really cool about InStockTrades.com. You can send yourself, you log in, you can send yourself reminders. The Masters of the Universe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles of Grayskull trade paperback is coming out. And that's going to be released in August, and you can actually set yourself a reminder for when you can order it. So this is a great feature in InStockTrades.com if there's some books that you're looking for to do a search and start making yourself a wish list, which is really, really awesome. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics. All right, our discussion this episode is going to be issues 3 and 4 of Turtles of Grayskull. The script is by Tim Seeley, the art by Freddie E. Williams II, the color art by Andrew Dahlhaus, letters by Androll Design, standard covers Freddie E. Williams II with Andrew Dahlhaus, variant cover B artist is Tyler Crook, variant cover C artist is Ramon Villalobos, variant cover D and E artists are Mike Ruth and Electable Comics. The publisher is Mike Richardson. The editor is Brett Israel. The associate editor is Tara McCarran. And apologies for any name butchery in any of this, because this remains stunning.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the cover in a second. I do want to do a little aside that relates to this. I have been putting in my shopping cart action figures to look at for this, because they're really good.
Yeah.
In these next couple issues is the Stealth He-Man, for example, which is an action figure. He has the stealth accessories. We can put the hood on him and stuff like that. There's more than one Leonardo because of the different timey-wimey stuff that's been going on in this. I've really been enjoying seeing the different versions of these characters that are in there. You can get Ninja, you can get, it's just, there's the whole line. I also started looking into the history of the figures, because we were kind of talking last episode about, we were young at the time, so knowing about waves and what that looked like. So wave 1 was like a small wave. You had to have jumped in, though. You were right about middle school when you were saying your timeline. Okay. So your timeline was, I must have gotten my first action figure much later in the line. I want to say much later, a couple years, which for when we were kids, that was later. That was much later. It's not now. But
The line, you probably jumped in around series 2 or series 3 of the line. So they released them in waves. It kind of released like G.I. Joe did initially, where they had a small, not small, I mean, when you're putting out like 10 to 12 figures, that's a pretty impressive output. Battle Cat was in the first round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was, and then wave 2 and 3 added, like, because you mentioned you had Ram Man and stuff like that, right? So
Yes.
he came in later lines. But when I say later, it was literally like there was maybe 6 months or so that they were releasing wave 1 and then wave 2, because it was just a very different era as far as how those came out and television commercials revolving around it. It's a very interesting history as far as this action figure line driving a cartoon and then in the future driving comics and stuff like that. But they certainly created a rich tapestry with this.
Yeah.
This cover where we're seeing the Turtles of Grayskull on it and seeing He-Man and the whole team in these little bubbles with, at this point in time, we know so much about the villains. We still haven't gotten the full reveal, but seeing all of them surrounding them, this was a really cool choice. Because this is 360-degree surrounding of the heroes with the villains in this. I just love this cover. I think it's just really, really clever. Every cover on this has its own unique flavor to it and a lot of pop. I also love the fact, because they're in these bubbles and there's that light sourcing in there. I like how their bodies and the color work and everything are reflective of the light sourcing. Yeah. I love when that kind of stuff happens. It's stuff that I pay much more attention to now than I did when I was younger, but I appreciate so much more now what it does as far as adding a sense of mood and tone to it. I mean, this is a really, really good looking cover.
Oh God, yeah. And again, you mentioned the 360 thing with them right in the middle. As a kid, none of this would have had, I would have just moved on, but it's one of the things I love about the show is that I appreciate the artistry more. And just the little stuff that you mentioned, the lighting source and just all that kind of like the reflection on Shredder's helmet. Just the fact that the two main villains, Shredder and Skeletor, aren't forefront. They've got the more newer people in the forefront and the bottom, where they put they decided to put the two main villains up on the upper corners. I like the layout and like the design, but I do like the fact that He-Man is front and center. Yeah, because again, you got to have that initial draw in, but then you start seeing the turtles around. You start seeing, Tila off to the side there. Yeah, because it's funny throughout this series. There's been times when I've confused Tila and April, especially later when April kind of gets gets Masters of the Universe fied. So there's been a couple of times, I've had to do a second look to see, okay, yeah, that's April. That's okay. And it's kind of, it's one of those neat things about just these characters. Again,
and it was due to Sorceress, which we'll talk further about when we get to it, but that's cool.
And like last issue, we had that one character that I actually didn't recognize as being Beastman because he had the mask on, that he got from Shredder. And I was like, that's kind of neat that they're meshing, the universes are meshing. We commented on how the Turtles are getting that going on, and I love that. But I love that the supporting cast, the other characters are also getting that same treatment. So it's kind of a nice little... it's a good attention to detail on that. No, it's not just the Turtles. It's not just He-Man who gets still fun. All of them have to get a little tweak because of these universes interconnecting. Cool choice to make.
And where this toy line wound up being so cool, the Masters of the Universe toy line wound up being so cool, is the fact that it just lends itself to storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And they're taking two amazingly rich properties. In the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now, my gosh, so much cool storyline's been there. I started dipping into the omnibuses of it just for fun. I've got so many things I'm reading right now that I'm, and in a good way, I'm just based on my mood, I'm just picking up a lot of stuff. And those omnibuses are really, really good looking back at the original black and whites. I did read some of those back in the day. And it was a budgetary thing that kept me from being a regular follower of it. But if I was in the comic shop, that was back in the day when I'd go into a comic shop, and if I was browsing around and I had a little extra disposable cash, I would be inclined to pick up an issue, a singleton issue of something, just to try it out. And Turtles fell into that group. It was, I remember it was on 185th. There was that comic shop that was on 185th. It was on a corner store. And I loved the guy. I will endlessly have a soft spot because the Moonshadow hardcover by J.M. DeMatteis and John J. Muth, they had this signed and numbered full collection of the 12 issues of Moonshadow. My mother got it for me for my birthday because of the fact that I kept eyeing it in the shop. She went into his shop and said that I was a customer. He remembered me and she goes, I'm looking for a gift for him for his birthday. And she said, I have no idea what to get him. And he said, he looks at this almost every week. Dude, I was shocked. I ended up getting it from there. But I would talk to him regularly about things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and just say, hey, I've never read this before. And this is the day when comic shop owners were going to conventions and were really to kind of that was how they sold back issues. And also they were connecting with comic creators that way. So he knew the Simonsons, for example.
Yeah.
And was sharing stories of that. It was neat. It was just really a neat era. But that was my first exposure to Ninja Turtles, was those original black and whites, which are really, really good. If you've never read them and you're listening to this, do yourself a favor and seek out some of that material. There's lower cost trades if you don't want to invest in an omnibus that you can look at.
It's funny you talk about the 185th Street shop because I had very similar interactions with that guy.
Nick was his name, right? Am I thinking of that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, but I can't remember his last name or anything like that.
You know how many years it's been? I mean, the fact that I can tell you the shop owner's name, I'm almost positive his name was Nick.
I think you're right, too.
That says something because I've been to a lot of comic shops since then. But he had an impact. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, yeah. And again, just, what you said about how he was that friendly, open kind of guy. Same thing, the guy on Robin Hood Lane had the same kind of just that friendliness to him.
Jim. Yeah. Comic Heaven.
Yeah, Comic Heaven.
Yeah, he's still there too.
Yeah. I've stopped by a couple times. He doesn't remember me because it's been so many years, but before he knew who I was, and he was set aside different stuff for me. Like, hey, I thought you might like this. Oh, thanks. So it was kind of neat. But the 185th History guy, I was sitting there and I'm looking through books, and he's like, can I help you with something? And I hadn't really interacted with him. And it was right around the time of Operation Galactic Storm was coming out, and I picked up one issue, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I want to have all the issues. And I'm like trying to find it, and he's like, hold on. So he spent a couple minutes with me. Hey, we found out, got the full stack of all the issues. Here you go. Here's the full story. I'm like, all right, But it was just that little bit, because he's seeing a guy just go through the thing, pull out one here, then go over here. I was walking around a little bit lost, and he's like, hey, a nice, friendly guy. He was just a really cool comic book owner. And it's one of those things, like when you get a good comic shop that does just that little bit of, hey, how you doing? Just hanging out, talking, just BSing with you. It makes a world of difference, in shopping and in being willing to go back there and give them even more money.
Well, and also being able to try recommendations of theirs.
Yeah.
Because he was somebody that listened to you. He had a very organized shop, like you're mentioning, which is something that's, I think, key to a really good comic shop, is the fact that when you're looking for something, I'm somebody that I've got the guy issue of I don't like to ask for directions, and that applies to when I'm in a store. I'm just browsing when I know what I'm looking for, but I'll say I'm just browsing. And I go in and I will literally try to figure out the organization of the shop in order to do that.
Yes.
And so I'll spend about a good half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes maybe even more, because it's a comic shop and I just enjoy looking around anyway. Before somebody goes to me, do you look like you're looking for something? Do you need help? And they'll help me with the organization of the shop. But I'm always impressed by the shops where the people in the shop know exactly where everything's at and how to find things. Nick was one of those guys that shop in 185th that had a really good job of just navigating us through like where everything was, and got to know me. Like I said, my mom went in there. He knew who I was and gave her a hardcover that I couldn't. My budget would not have allowed me to purchase at the time. So it was a perfect gift. And I still have it to this day. It's actually one of my favorite possessions, just because of the story behind it and because the work is so good. But that was my first exposure to Ninja Turtles, was at his shop on 185th. I vividly remember it because I asked him because he read a lot. And I said, is this any good? Is it worth me picking up? He pointed me to that and to read Fleming's World's Toughest Milkman, which is also one of my favorite books to this day. I mean, there's not a lot of issues of Reed Fleming, but if you're listening to this and you haven't sought that out and you're looking for something a little wacky, read Fleming World's Toughest Milkman. You can find Dave Boswell was the creator, and Deep Sea Comics is still a website, and you can still purchase issues of Reed Fleming's World's Toughest Milkman. Speaking of a dozen, there's maybe have been between the different volumes like a dozen issues total, but they're all worth it and incredibly wacky. So back to Turtles of Grayskull. So we've gone on a little bit of a tangent. As we're looking at Manhattan at Earth, and this is the time where He-Man is supposed to be staying away from the Turtles' world. None of them are doing what they're supposed to. I love when there's timey-wimey stuff where it feels like fate is intervening, and they were doing everything they could to kind of stay away, but circumstances are forcing them in both cases, both He-Man and the Turtles, to interact with the people they shouldn't be. My gosh, we talked so much about details in our last episode and fine details. When you look at Manhattan and the people crossing the street, the establishment of the buildings, but then even going around into the underground sewer, the graffiti on the walls, the vehicles, just everything that was created when you see the foreground characters and the background. This is a labor of love, this book. You just see it in details. Yeah. Details always, to me, say a lot about the artwork and the story, the dialogue in this. The dialogue is very rich. There was times where, and we've talked about this before, I'm not going to go crazy into it, but crossovers were kind of hit and miss at a certain point in time. Because of these type of creators who have really set the bar very high on what a crossover should be now, these are exactly the geek out things that they are supposed to be. Because it is a deep, rich story with great, well-written dialogue, artwork that just shows that they love this property and that they're really embracing what they know is going to be cool, not only for themselves, but for an audience. This is the first page, and my jaw was dropping on details. I pay so much more attention to that now, just because I know that that's something you could do an establishing shot and kind of phone that in along the way. They didn't with any of this. Really, just a lot of content, a lot of detail going on in this. This has benefited from the creators that are involved.
Oh God, yeah. And again, it's little artist, the little art notice, little notice of detail that they go through. But I really did love the dialogue throughout this sequence.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because again, I'm going back to the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and I'm hearing those voices when I'm reading the stuff, for all of them, and just going back to the cartoon with He-Man, hearing his voice, and it just just the dialogue, the cadence, just what's going on. It 100% fits what's going on in my brain, and I love those kind of moments when you get a pure connection to what my head's thinking it should be to what we're actually going with, and I love, again, Splinter throughout the series. We've been gushing about Adam and the Turtles, and we should have, because they've been doing a great job. But some of these Splinter moments that they pull in, I always do love when Splinter's just got that connect. He's Master Splinter. There's a reason the Turtles aren't masters yet. They're still the students. Splinter has that level of consciousness that we don't have, and we all hope to one day accomplish and achieve, There's a reason I'm a sensei, not a master of whatnot. I'm not there yet, but I love seeing, just Splinter's connection to the metaphysical, and that notion. It's funny because this is coming. He's a rat, he's a mutated rat, but the one thing about rats, that a lot of people don't realize, rats are actually very intelligent animals, and it's been shown that they've got this cognitive levels that, no one ever realized that a rat would have unless the people have been studying them. So I do like the fact that it's a rat who gets mutated, who then becomes the master. It's a neat little thing.
It's funny, in martial arts, the sensei's a teacher. Yeah. And I look at you now and I think you're like one slurp of purple Kool-Aid away from like being a bad guy based on this story.
One slurp away? If I'm not already the bad guy?
I don't know. I don't know what you're masterminding yet. We'll see. If things get timey-wimey and there's like 8 of me or something like that, it'll be, which is a scary thought. I I really liked Splinter so much in this. I think that he's kind of the Professor X of the group, and I'm not saying that in a generic sense. The Turtles, because of their nature and the fact that they're young, they need that. We need that team leader, and I like that he has a very valid, necessary role. They need that person to play off of as they're growing and maturing. And we talk about character development. Turtles have had an immense amount of character development along the way. And I feel like Splinter brings that to the table. Casey Jones and April O'Neil were great in this too. This series did a great job of spotlighting not just the main characters, but the important supporting cast from both the world of the Masters of the Universe and the world of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I felt it's hard to give everyone screen time and not make it look forced. Because sometimes it's like, okay, we didn't do anything with the Man-at-Arms. Let's sneak him in here. That wasn't this. The story is built around the idea of, because we're in these separate worlds, it's a great chance to spotlight through the Turtles looking at He-Man's supporting cast and He-Man looking at the Turtles supporting cast, each of these characters and their interactions. That's good writing too, because the April and Casey relationship with the flirtation from Casey that was going on is so organic throughout this. It's not overdone. It feels like we're continuing to explore their world in a way that fits. I like that this feels like it happened, in their world, if that makes any sense. I love when crossovers actually feel like you can kind of timologically place them for the characters. And I love that kind of stuff.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, I loved how, He-Man just like, I'm the most powerful man, and I'll figure this out. And he just goes off, just goes off. And it's, Splinter, again, recognizes he is a teenager.
Yeah.
Just like his boys.
Yep.
He's impetual. He doesn't sometimes come up with some good, solid strategy. He just goes and reacts. He's got that bit of a hothead in him. He got a little bit of the, I just got to do this right now. I can't wait. How bad could it be? And I'll take down this guy. And then love, again, Splinter's the one who, takes him down relatively easily, just using that simple cloak, to showing him, hey, you go up against, a Roku Saki like this, you won't last.
Right.
It will destroy you. And I love just the fact that he's like, hey, maybe you need to learn a little ninjutsu. And I happen to know a teacher. I thought that right there, I love this sequence. Again, brilliant writing of Splinter. Takes him down, doesn't humiliate him, because you don't want to insult a teenage kid, because that pushes them away.
Right.
It just says, hey, look at this. This is an idea for you. And lets He-Man say, yes, I need somebody to teach me your ways. I thought that for me was just a brilliant way of handling it. And is, again, really does show Splinter understands the mind of a teenager. Because periodically, you do have to remind yourself that they're teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're kids. So there are his boys. They are young kids who, even though they're large and in charge, they're still kids. And same thing with Adam. He's still a kid inside there. It's a neat, usage, and just a good, again, a nice storytelling aspect.
I think it serves another layer too. Ditto to everything you just said. Adding on to that, though, I think in the case of Splinter, he's always going to view them as his boys. As they continue to grow and evolve, which we've seen through that piece. You're right on everything you said, but I would add on to that you get that natural feeling, which is good. The other thing I want to shout out is the fact that through physical motion, because that's something that's really apparent, you get this sense of, and facial expression, which is really critical here, that boyish enthusiasm. It's really tough to be able to pull this off with He-Man, because you don't want to lose this sense of intense power. And you don't, like the intense power and determination when he's bursting through the wall with the throom. You see that determination on his face. But if you look at the other panels, you actually see the boyish enthusiasm. Like, he's not thinking about, like, he's just determined to go forward. And you see that determination and enthusiasm in the way that he's carrying himself. Those shots were really, really good because they added that sense of motion. And the Splinter bit was absolutely outstanding. We then flash to Eternia. And we get to start seeing the establishment of that. And just as much care was given to Eternia, as I mentioned, in Our Earth. and what was going on there. And I love that. The idea that they were establishing for us artistically this growing, thriving, living world with just a wonderful cast. It's not just our cast of characters that we are used to seeing. There is a plethora of races, and it's so cool to see that. Just to get the idea of how rich there is actually a kingdom for Adam's family to preside over. And I really liked seeing that piece. Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, continuing on with the Turtles, finding a place where this all seems normal to them. And they're used to these interdimensional stuff. They're used to seeing green guys that are talking, walking, talking turtles isn't anything new to them. So I love the fact that whenever they're like, hey, everyone's just so cool with the strangeness here. And they are. And if you realize, and I love seeing the Turtles deal with that,
To talk about dialogue, I want to directly quote the line. So everyone is cool with high strangeness here. And you see the smile on the turtle. I mean, I just love that. It's because they're used to being the unusual creatures and being viewed that way and being like almost set aside. It's that sense of belonging that you get when you're in an area where like, oh, like this is normal to them. That part is really, really cool. I was glad they gave Teela some nice sequences here. Because I've always remembered in the cartoon really liking that character as well, and her relationship with He-Man and what she brings to the table. I was glad we got to see her be a part of the strategy portion of this, because it's something that she brings to the table that I think is really, really cool. And the whole, she originally was like, no, you guys don't look any different because I just assumed you're part of Lizard Man's people. Yeah. And they're like, no, we're not lizards. And her bringing them up to speed on what's kind of problematically going on and I love when we get to see hologram effects. Yeah. Like that's another artistic tool that these things like light sourcing and holograms and stuff like that, when artists put them in, if you don't overdo them and you do it organically through a story like this, they're really impressive because you're giving a sense of light sourcing and transparency and things were things that aren't really transparent. These are physically drawn, whether you're doing it digitally or hybrid or whatever, artistic method you're using. These are things that are physically being done. It is not actually reacting to any real light and real room conditions in the case of the transparency piece. I'm always impressed when artists are able to pull off stuff like this and make it look like it's something that's popping out of a sci-fi movie, like what we're so used to seeing like in the Star Wars flicks, the holograms pop up. And that was kind of my establishment as a child, was seeing those pieces and seeing them today, done like this so well by artistic talent. It's really cool. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, going along exactly what you're saying, I love when we have the transition, when we have the hologram over, and it's something I do now. I look at the period, all the items underneath the hologram. Yeah. So you look at like Teela's arms and go down her legs, part of her, just her half of her body is covered. You compare that to the part that's not covered. And the way they do the coloring, the way they do the look of the stuff that's covered by the hologram, it's absolutely one of those things that little stuff like that just always makes you go, dang, that's impressive.
They nailed it.
Yeah, 100% nailed it. It's absolutely brilliant. Again, I said last time, I'm going to say it again. I'll probably say it again later on in the episode. My art read through the Turtles was an absolute sheer joy. And for those who don't know what the art read through is, I don't read any words. I just look at the pictures, and you just sit there and you just look at the images that's in front of you. It was an absolute joy. And I loved this book for that.
I think you can tell when an artist and a writer, an artistic team and a writer work well together, because there's a synergy here, in the dialogue, and everything just matches, right? It doesn't look like these things are so separate, which sometimes you can tell when like the script was this and the art was this, not making any sense. This is a complete meshing of a story that's being told. There's a collaborative process that clearly happened here for this story, and the story benefits from it. I also love, I'm finding my favorite artists are the ones where they continue to grow. You continue to see their work evolve and them try new things, and they're still having fun. Because that's a hard piece, I think, in any job, becomes the point when you're focused on deadlines and getting there. I'm assuming for artists that can sometimes it's a roller coaster of enthusiasm. Sometimes you're just so stuck on deadlines and things like that it's hard to enjoy the work. But at some point in time, you have to find those opportunities to enjoy it and to grow. And it's really apparent in Freddie's work if you take a look at it. And I encourage you to do this with any artist that you enjoy. Freddie's a great example of this. If you look back at his early work straight on through to now, you see an immense amount of growth there. Always a talented artist, always put his stamp on work, but he's continued to experiment and grow. And I love seeing that now. I tend to jump back and read classic work of a lot of my favorite artists now, just to compare and contrast. And you see the building blocks. And that part is it's fascinating in comics to be able to see all of that. And I do think the ones that stand out, the ones that are ones of note and that you start having personal attachment with, are the ones that every time you have the opportunity to interact with them and the writers that they work with, that they partner with, you get something where it's like this, like, I'm geeking out because this is just fun. Man-at-Arms, you mentioned him last episode, and I want to go back to that character just really, really quick, because I feel like this issue, especially with, like, in the hologram image where that's holograms coming off of his glove, the amount of detail on his armor is really cool, and he has such important dialogue sequences in all of this. He's a key player in this story. I loved the use of Man-at-Arms in this story because of the fact that you split off He-Man and the Turtles so much. There was a real chance to spotlight him in a way that I think was really, really good.
They did a lot of the Splinter stuff.
Yes.
With Man-at-Arms, and that was something I really liked. Again, and we saw that last time when we were talking, the first iteration of this, we saw him take like a mentor role, so even now, this is the second variation of the timey-wimey stuff. So he hasn't had that long interaction with the Turtles, but right from jump, you see him naturally just fill in that role. He is that leader. He's that commander. He's that Adam, He-Man is Adam to him. That's his little boy. That's his kid that he looks after. That's his, person he's sworn to protect. So I love the fact that he naturally jumps into that kind of protection role and leadership and mentorship of the Turtles. That's something that always is. That was kind of cool because we saw it the first issue, the first two issues where it was their first iteration. This is now the redo of them meeting. He automatically jumps into that role. And again, same thing like with Leo. He's got the code. When they're looking, because when some of their people are missing, Leo's like, hey, our code says we don't turn down those in need. So he's like, we're going to help out as well. And all these stuff. And it's the exact same stuff that happened last time. It's continuing. It's who they are. It's their very nature. And I love that, seeing that, again, it's a good explanation of who these characters are. It's a good understanding of who these people are.
You touch that stupid wig, Mikey, I swear I'll break your fingers. I just loved that sequence because you just see him looking and eyeing that wig because they want the gear. And I get that. I actually love that part. Because we already want to see the mashup. They've got us, and we've seen some establishment of the mashup in earlier issues. It's always cool when the characters match your enthusiasm. There's a connecting thread there that I think is neat. The piece I also want to mention, too, is referencing back to what you were saying about Man-at-Arms and the relationship with Adam. It's really critical when you've got the duality of He-Man and Adam that we care about Adam, too, not just when he's He-Man. And sometimes Adam gets lost in the shuffle because of the fact that we want the vehicle to get him to be He-Man and then see him do cool He-Man stuff. It's really important to establish who Adam is as a person, that people care about him and why. Man-at-Arms does. And I like that he feels responsible for the fact that Adam has this burden of being He-Man. And that part came across in the storyline in a way that I thought was really, really cool, that it's not something I always like. It's been a while since I've really delved into He-Man. And it's like, oh yeah, that was a thing, as far as what that looked like. I'm glad that they brought that into this. It got me more interested in knowing more about what that relationship is like and more about that piece. I feel like this is doing everything a crossover should. It's drawing me into wanting to read more of these characters.
Oh, yeah. 100% has me, wanting to read more Turtles, wanting to read more Master of the Universe. I love, again, it's one of the, we talked earlier, and again, going to say it probably again later on. This mashup, for me, this is how you run a mashup.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just, you throw them together, you give a reason why they're together, and then you let them be themselves and interact with each other. That is one of the reasons I love this so much, is because this could be a Turtle story. This could be a He-Man story.
Yeah.
On its own.
Yes.
And we've got the, we have the added together. It's, it's, peanut butter meets chocolate, it's just this perfect matchup. I'm loving it.
I think you're nailing the key there, though. This could be a really strong Turtles story. This could be a real strong He-Man story. And I think that's really great, because if you're a fan of one of the properties and that's what drew you to this, you're going to feel right at home. And I think that's something when you do a mashup like this, it's really important that you're not screwing it up for one of those two audiences, because there's an opportunity to make something special by doing that. And they didn't do it. This timey-wimey stuff in Japan, Earth in the Past, I don't know who Renette is, and if I'm butchering her name, I apologize, because I am going to watch the episodes from television that she's in, and I'm going to kick myself when I find out that I'm butchering the name. But I love when you tell backstory by living it, seeing it, being a part of it. And she does it by hanging out with Splinter as a rat, a not evolved yet rat who is hanging with her through that process. That was a cool choice.
Yeah.
Everything about this worked. It really gives a rich history of Shredder. It gives a rich history of Splinter, and it gives a rich history of the character who's going to become our bad guy in all of this.
Yes.
Which I really liked how they established this and gave this a lot of screen time. Really cool martial arts moments. I loved growing up martial arts movies and things like that. So this brought in, I think, and you know what I'm talking about. There's Kung Fu theater and stuff like that on Sunday mornings. And it was, this took me back to like elements of that which so totally fits into the Turtle universe, right? And I loved how that played into this. And I love how they organically, Skeletor becomes a part of this. I was like, oh, so he's encountering this wizard who is, asking things of him. We get to see the fact that our main villain of this is playing multiple, for his own opportunities, playing multiple parties in order to get what he wants to advance himself. And I really like seeing like this initial development of Ninja, who's going to be Ninjor, this initial development this way. I don't know much about this character. Other than, I know that this character has occurred previously. I saw those pieces. For me, this is an entryway into Ninjor. And I want to see other appearances of the character, but I really like this origin that's going on here and how this mashup plays heavily into who the character becomes and how powerful he becomes for this particular story.
Yeah. And I love catching them, them before we have the great feud between them.
Yes.
We're seeing two friends working out, and we know eventually they're both going to feud over the same woman. Shredder will murder her, frame him. He flees to America. Bam, we get our Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing those moments where they're not enemies. They're friends. And this other guy is the bad guy to both of them. He's their nemesis. He is just this, rotten to the core kind of guy that we're like, hey, this is the bad guy. And I love seeing these two friends together against him. It was again, a neat little glimpse into what will become, and you always ask the question, what if they hadn't had the feud? What if there's so many variations from these couple pages that you could actually spin the Turtle universe completely on its head. And I love that.
I'm sure I'm butchering it. Sekiryu. It's Sekiiou. I'm going to keep calling him Ninjor after I've already established the fact that I'm going to butcher it. But I love the development of this character in that. Always better when you've got that connection. You know what they made look really cool in this? Not only did they make Splinter look really cool, but Shredder. Shredder looks, wow, is this a really cool version of Shredder? Seeing him in the past. I like when there's cool bad guys, where you like look at them and go, oh, all right, He was always cool.
Yeah.
Because the look of Shredder's cool. And I like that they have established that piece. The training between the two of them was really, really well done. It needed to be there. And this is an example of really using the page count very, very well to give us what we want. Before flipping to Bat He-Man.
Yeah.
I love Stealth He-Man. Stealth He-Man. I want that action figure I'm owning.
You know that one?
My gosh, it's this character design right here when he's looking over in the crowd. This is cool. I love the details in the cloak, where you see the folds. There's something when talent really does this kind of stuff. Not only the detail in the folds, but the armor, the covering in the armor, how it's got like a turtle shell almost kind of theme to this stealth armor to it because we're mashing up in the other way right now. Everything about this works without losing what makes He-Man so cool. And that is just an awesome example of how you mash something up and just make it look awesome. Everything's a little darker. You can see how this would help him blend into an environment. He learned something from this in a very short period of time from a great teacher. And that's something we need to geek out about as fans. This is so cool. And if what he's looking down at does not look so detailed and so established, it doesn't matter. We're seeing him look down, and because that has all kinds of light sourcing, you see why it's important for him to blend in the background. Nobody's going to see him in those tones. Look at the perch. He almost perfectly blends in with the perch that he's on.
Yep.
So you have to be really knowing that you have to look for somebody in order to see him. It's not like he's invisible, but I like that. I like the way that it actually makes sense that he would not be easily noticed unless you're really looking for him. That was cool. That was really cool.
Oh, God, yeah. Again, we've geeked out a lot on the art, and we're going to keep geeking out on it. But little stuff like this where you get that great detail of the party going on. And then when you flip the page, you got the turtles watching a very similar party going on. But it's all, lizard, alien, turtle-looking people. So, again, I love just how they did the comparison between the two worlds. And it's the heroes thinking the same thoughts. What if I was just a normal guy? What if I was just a normal kid? What if I was just a normal turtle, or I was a turtle on Eternia? I loved how they did that brilliant blend of each of the characters, and each of the characters have their own version of Splinter helping them through it. Yeah. And with you got Master Splinter, and you got Man-at-Arms with the turtles. And again, it was a really cool 2-page spread to just look back and forth between the two different pages, have them side by side. Again, brilliant usage of art and story, working together here.
Yeah, I really liked seeing Adam in human, Adam just being Prince Adam, and seeing actually just being Adam, not Prince Adam, just being Adam on Earth and what his life would have been like. I do love that the wig has been incorporated into our Ninja Turtle gear. That part is so way cool. The action figure, there is an action figure of that actually.
With him with the wig?
Oh, I am so going to own that. It's I'm trying to seek through. I'm going to go to DCBS and check them out because I've got to actually today. We're at the end of the month and I haven't placed my order yet. So you mentioned that some of the figures are available there. So I'm starting.
A lot of figures are there. So check that out.
Yeah. So I'm starting there first. And then I'm going to go back. And actually, for anybody listening to this, you are able to, they want the orders in at a certain point in time. But one of the things I do like about them, there's been times where I've gone back and I've forgotten to order something or wasn't aware that something was on the table to order. And they're usually, if they're able to, they're very accommodating.
Talk about accommodation. I 1 month completely forgot to do the order. I completely forgot to do my order. I'm like, I forgot the order. I normally order blah, blah, blah. Like, here you go. Here's the order form, knock it out. And I was able to get everything from the list. And I was past the time. So again, talk about accommodating, talk about really good customer service. And I'm an idiot when it comes to a lot of stuff technically. So I was communicating back and forth with them saying, I can't get it to download because I couldn't get the form they sent me to work. I'm like, here's another version. This should work with you. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, man. So customer service, really cool people. And we talked earlier about how you go to a good comic shop and you sit there and you talk to them. DCS is the same kind of people over there, because they are an actual comic shop in Indiana,
right?
So they are comic shop people. They just have this great internet presence. So again, that same kind of cool mindset. They're good guys.
I don't know what their con schedule looks like, but they've I've been at multiple cons where they've set up booths and things like that have been there. Go and say hello to them because they're good people. You'll see like right away. It's a comic shop. I mean, you can tell just by the interactions with them, what they do. So we got a continued stealth infiltration that's going on here with He-Man, and it was cool to see him fitting in with April and with Casey Jones and with Splinter and seeing all that go down. I love when you see cool stuff like this, them breaking in through the sewers, doing everything the Ninja Turtle way, until I was ready at this point for a battle.
Yeah.
And we got Shredder showing up on the scene, but also Oni from He-Man's world. I'm kind of plopping in and seeing just the level of what they're dealing with here. This battle was really, really awesome. I like that Shredder got one on He-Man. Got the slice to He-Man's face, and He-Man's like, I sitting here, He-Man just saying whatever he offered you is not worth the price of your soul. I love that kind of stuff and that kind of reaction. It's an example of what you talked about earlier, how important the dialogue is to all of this as well. You can have beautiful art sequences, amazingly well done art sequences. When you marry it to terrific dialogue, it just becomes special. And this has so many of those moments. I want to see this animated because I want somebody to act this out because, man, this is like tailor-made to be an animated crossover as well.
Oh, big time. And again, you talked earlier about how Shredder looked pretty badass before. Again, taking a punch from He-Man is pretty tough. So that right alone is, He-Man pulled his punch so he didn't knock his head off because he's a good guy. But still, he took a hard punch, and we see later Shredder rebounds from the fight. So I do like seeing when, as you said before, the villains are tough. And that was one of the weaknesses that the cartoon had in some of the earlier seasons. Yeah. The villains seemed really lame and weak. And that's something they beefed up, in the movies as well as in some of the later sequences and especially in the comic book universe. Shredder seems like a badass. And I love the fact that he is a tough villain because you have to have a reason why 4 turtles have to fight one guy and they call it a fair fight.
Yes.
We're seeing why. And I like that. I really do enjoy when we see a good, tough villain. It's one of those things I love about Lex Luthor so much is he is that great villain. One of the reasons we love the Joker so much is because he is just that, powerful force against the Bat. So this was a really neat sequence showing how tough Shredder is. And then you go on and you see the Turtles infiltration. And we also start seeing signs on the other side of He-Man's villains being tough.
Yeah.
So I loved how they kept balancing this out. It wasn't just we have to give time to He-Man, we have to give time to the Turtles. No, they're showing just how comparative, how similar these two universes are to each other, and how they each have powerful villains, they each have powerful heroes, they each have powerful allies. And I love that the allies of both sides are getting some really good screen time.
There's also this mutagen that is beefing everybody up.
Yeah.
And we know that the mutagen's really important for them to keep reminding us of because that's what we're trying to avoid from He-Man. So we've got these mashups happening, and the problem is we know they're taking us to the same end game. If they keep mashing up like this, it's eventually going to be He-Man takes the mutagen and He-Man kills everybody.
Yes.
So that's what we're trying to avoid here. And we're seeing that fate kind of playing out again in this sequence. And I like it. I like that we're getting more of a real time now of this unfolding. And this story benefited greatly from that. Man-at-Arms with his accessory gear is really sweet. Like, I like all of a sudden he's now got this climbing gear thing. It's like it's Man-at-Arms having that kind of Swiss Army knife approach is something that I've really always enjoyed about the character. And it worked really well in this story.
And I want to say they did incorporate some of this in the later action figure lines. Mm-hmm. The Man-at-Arms that I had just was the basic, Man-at-Arms. It didn't have anything fancy, but I want to remember seeing you could get additional accessories for Man-at-Arms. And if not, they should, because that's part of the neat things. You add that onto Man-at-Arms, you can change it around and whatnot. So
Yeah, it was. I didn't realize when I got a He-Man action figures, it was that small window I talked about. It had to have been like maybe 6th grade into 7th then, based on the timeline that you were talking about. It was later in the line. I had gotten into the cartoon and I'm like, I actually kind of want an action figure. So I got a couple of them, but it was at a time where I didn't realize that I was starting to get into the concept of, displaying. That wasn't a thing when we were at that age, where
Right.
like we people would set up displays and those type of things. So I was admiring the sculpts of the characters and not recognizing that, oh, wait, there's other purposes for these. These can be almost like statues, because the concept of swag as we understand it today was nowhere near what it is today.
Yeah.
But I had a Man-at-Arms. I had Battle Cat. I had He-Man. I did eventually get a Skeletor because I felt like if I had, heroes, I probably should have a
You
villain.
needed the villains, yeah.
But it was at a time where there was other interests, other things that I was, interested in, and I had no budget. So I kind of stopped there with the line. But you're right that when you look through and see where the line went, there's multiple versions of a lot of the main characters because of the fact that they kept enhancing the characters along the way or growing them based on in response to the TV series, or maybe the TV series was in response to where they wanted to grow the line. I think it was probably a little bit of A and a little bit of B with that piece. Mattel, I'm sure, was driving some of the production of the cartoon as well because of the fact that it was to sell a toy line. It was such an interesting time.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. This page where we flip and we get to see them show up on the scene because the need for stealth is gone was a really sharp page because we get to see Ram Man and some of these other characters, Kool-Aided, for lack of a better, the juices working on them. And you get to see that kind of monster mashup with them in a way that works really well because it adds a sense of why do we need these two teams? Why do we need the Turtles and why do we need He-Man's team teamed up together? Because of the threat. The threat is much larger. Everyone is amped up to a very different level because of the mutagen.
One of the things I did like was the fact that they do show us corrupted Ramp Man following Skeletor's orders.
Yes.
And it further shows why they would want to, goop up He-Man.
Yeah.
Because we know what happens when they goop up He-Man. He just peers into pure rage and he just lashes out and kills everything. But seeing Ram Man here, that would give them reason to think, oh, hey, it worked on that guy. It's going to work on him. We'll be able to control He-Man. I love that we have that little bit there to let us understand why they want to do so much.
Great dialogue for that. I bet that hurt, didn't it, Man-at-Arms? But not nearly so much as the realization that those broken ribs come from one you long called a friend. All thanks to this little collaboration. I love that dialogue was just great. As far as outlining that piece. It's also very good for people that maybe aren't fans of Master of the Universe that are coming to this from the Turtle side of things. Oh, these are friends. Like, oh, gosh, they're going there. So you're right. It's not just He-Man. It's other people have already been corrupted. That part is really important establishment when you're doing something like this. You've got to cater to an audience that may be new to a certain property from this or just have a very general understanding of it. This was without it being too much in your face, because sometimes you can go too far with that where it's like, okay, enough narrative. These guys are friends. I get it already. It never overstays its welcome. There's a balance to this that I think that they achieved really well.
And then on the other side on Earth, you have Shredder commenting back to He-Man about, is it worth selling your soul?
Yeah.
Because he's saying how powerful the mutagen made Rocksteady and Bebop. Made two useless, two moronic lackeys and gave them what they needed to be useful. And then you see them mutated together. And I'm like, oh, okay. Again, further explaining why these two villains are so in sync with each other, why they're working together, why they're actually gonna, why they want to go through this process. They really do see this as the way to increase what they want, to increase their goals, not just a let's see what happens kind of thing. I love that it does show the villains, thinking and, actually being intelligent.
Well, it also shows like their frustrations. Like with Shredder, purple mutagen makes masters of students. Okay, so to your point, like they've been defeated multiple times by the Turtles now. Now this is amping up the game. Skeletor, purple mutagen reveals truth. again, now he's got an army that is operating at a different level of, I don't know if loyalty is the right word, but there's certainly better tools for what Skeletor is trying to do here, at least in theory. We see that all is not well as this storyline goes on, but for right now, everything is playing out the way that the villains are saying, and it feels like much more like a war where they're back against a wall, the heroes, and that part's really good. They quoted you on the next page. Well, the answer is not gooder. I was thinking of you as I was reading it because they were like, flipping back to the past and seeing how things were going right there. And I was ready for this. I love these past sequences. I think this was something that I didn't see that I wanted out of this. And I think this has a lot of meat and potatoes for this. I love backstory when it's done really well like this. And this is an example of great backstory that you can see at even you can see two close friends with a student that you can see where they would eventually down the road no pun intended, splinter off. And I really, I was like, should I go there? I'm like, all right, but it's what happens. So it makes sense to just do it. I really like that. I like the tenet. I like that she, as she's going through and trying to, and I'm butchering her name, but I like as she is trying to veer events off from happening again, the way that she's seen time and time again. There's this sense of she doesn't have the tools that she needs. She's also not experienced enough to be able to make this happen. She's trying to find that critical point where, when did it happen so I can stop what happened from happening? And that's really her quest is, where did the knot begin? Where did the tangled threads begin? And she sees it here. Renette, Tilly is encountering Ninjor for the first time. And we get to see that he's there on the scene, recognizing, she's seeing that he is manipulating both worlds to his benefit. This is a much larger scheme than we even knew from everything that we've seen so far.
And I love the fact that Ninjor he's enemies with both of them.
Yes.
Skeletor for betrayal and the turtle and the turtles, the Shredder and for their perceived betrayal. He's like, he was there to learn, he was going to be the best of the best. They're like, no, you betrayed the Foot Clan. You have no honor, and I love that Shredder is the one who marks him with a big S on his chest for Skeletor, because that was his branding that got him kicked out of the Foot.
Yep.
That again, I love seeing the fact that our main villain here, Ninjor, isn't just an anti-turtle or anti-He-Man. He's anti-Shredder. He's anti-Skeletor. He's anti-turtles. He's anti-He-Man. He's after everybody. And I love the line at the end there where he's like, the enemy of my enemy is my greatest weapon. Again, you always have the enemy of my enemy is the enemy of my enemy, my friend. He's like, oh no, that's my greatest weapon is the enemy of my enemy, because I'm going to use my enemy of my enemy against each other. And I loved seeing, again, great showing, some really intelligent villain here. Very powerful villain here. And I love the fact that we're in issue 3 and we're really seeing the true face of the bad guy. This is the bad guy who's been messing with the timeline. This is the person who's done all this kind of thrown off all the turtle universe. I love that.
I like that she keeps trying to go back as far as she can to try and unravel the knot of the mystery. And she's trying to determine, where did this actually start? How did this actually start? And it isn't until she starts seeing what happens here that she realizes where it began. And in issue 4, we get to see the cover at the beginning. I love, I mentioned it before, I love every one of these covers. Oh my gosh, this is an example of just cover design that is just so well integrated in the story. The tangled web of time, the tapestry, but also I love how it makes it make him a puppet master for the whole sequence. Like, Ninjor looks fierce, Ninjor looks dangerous, but them caught up in the tangled web that he's created it was a really cool cover design that just made a lot of sense for the story.
And the look on Adam's face as he's kind of getting choked out by the one web line, is actually kind of really cool. And of course, Raph's got the cool hair. Mikey's got the cool hair.
Is that April?
Yes, I think that's April.
You know, that's
Or is that?
look, that's Tila.
I don't know. And again, that was one of the things that
Let me look back at it.
a
No, it's Tila. It's Tila.
That is Tila. Oh, okay.
Because I look back and where because of the mashups, I knew there's a certain point in time in this issue where we do get April Sorceress.
Yeah. When April's in Masters of the Universe mode, you can still see her hair.
Yeah.
They did a good job of making sure the hair is still out to help you kind of get a good idea on who's who. So
she has more of a bird-like headdress on her head too.
Yeah.
At that point.
Okay.
So no, that's definitely Tila in that sequence. I was like looking through just because of the fact that I'm looking for when April. I know this is the issue where April does that. That's definitely Tila on the cover.
Yeah.
But Renette and kicking her off at the beginning, running from Ninjor, which was good. That's one of the things that the transitions between issues were really strong in this. You know, where they did not drop the cliffhanger where they left you and started filling in the satisfying piece. Like, I want to know how she escapes from all of this. I like that it wasn't so simple, though. She jumps through a portal. He jumps right after her.
Yes.
Which I like seeing that stuff, too, where it's like, okay, we've got a smart and competent and skilled villain here. You know, you got to believe this guy is the guy that's trained with both Splinter and Shredder. He's got some mad skills, and we need to see and he's advanced since then. So that didn't just stay static. This is a guy that's continued to advance and become more powerful. Her getting away real easy shouldn't be a thing. I like seeing them jump through time and the various timelines that they're dealing with here.
And I like we get that in the upper corner, showing the moment when he first was able to steal the one wand away from her.
Yes.
You know, again,
she caused this.
Yeah, she caused everything, you know, because he initially was able to steal that wand, and then she got the backup wand, and she's been using the backup wand.
Yeah.
Well, here's the moment when she loses the original wand that she had. And I liked seeing all that stuff going on. And again, a nice little, we're at the end, we're getting near the end of the story, so we get a neat little summary of really pulling everything together. Why this is the one true villain of this story. You can argue all you want about Skeletor and Shredder being villains, and they are, but the true villain of this story is this guy right here. We are seeing he directly is causing all of this. And I love how they took a couple pages to just really bring it home and let us know. If we weren't completely aware of it, now we know. And I love when a story, you know, will give you that good thing to, you know, throughout the story, they've been leading us there. Let's bring it home. And they did that here.
He's a threat to all of existence.
Yes.
Which is real interesting. So it's the villains are in danger because of him too. So this is an across the board thing. The important part with this one too is she loses the scepter. So she's got no scepter. This starts to now turn this timeline that they're on right now is a point of no return. It's we either get this right or we're done. And I liked that being taken out of it because with timey-wimey stuff, a lot of times, you know, time travel being the way to, we can just pop back in time and keep trying to solve it. She's been trying to do that and has successfully revealed the mystery that we're dealing with here. But now her scepter's gone. The ability for her to go back to that point of origin and undo this is now gone. So now the timeline that's in front of us has got to play out, and they've got to avoid the inevitable consequences of He-Man killing everything and everyone. I like that setup. I mean, it's woo.
Yeah. And again, they're all together now. And I love the fact that that little sequencing, you know, really was used to pull everybody into one spot now.
Yep.
All the heroes are now, you know, in Skull Mountain, or this is Grayskull. They're all in Eternia, so it's all together now. And I liked how they've been brought together, and even the heroes and villains can start realizing something. Because Renette throws out the name Sekiryu, and Shredder's like, hey, that's a former Foot Clan student I know. Yeah. You know, Hamato, and even Splinter jumps in. Hamato Yoshi expelled him for dishonor, and he called himself Ninjor. And he was like, wait, I battled a Ninjor. Skeletor sent him to kill me. And Skeletor was like, I promised something. When you defeated him, I sent him packing. So, again, bringing all the characters up to speed, why this one guy hates all four of them.
Yeah,
you know?
yes.
I love that. And I love the fact that they're going, that even then the Turtles are realizing, wait, he's just not after the teachers. He's after the students. That's why he hates us. brilliant, usage of showing these characters are able to think and come up with the answers and just lay it out on the line. It was a really neat moment, and I loved how things were going. And then you get the twist of, oh crud, the one thing we didn't want to happen just happened, and Adam gets hit with the ooze.
That's an action figure, by the way. Adam with the ooze.
Ooh, cool.
They're the evil,
the evil version.
Kool-Aid He-Man.
Yeah.
I'm going to own one of those too. I mean, it's accurate. I mean, the hair, the green hair with the purple and everything like that. That's what the figure has, all of that. It's way cool. I want evil He-Man.
Yes.
Yeah. It's, this is an example of just where the fact that you can get like this. There's going to be a shelf display of this. I'm trying to figure out where right now, but I think this stuff is so cool. And the fact you can get swag that goes along with this is just, this is awesome.
Yeah. And I loved how the villains are gloating, like, yay, we have the most powerful we've corrupted the most powerful creature. It's beautiful. And Skeletor's like, yeah, he's going to smash into Grayskull for us. Everything's perfect. And then Adam rips Kang in half.
Yeah.
I love that sequence where Kang's like, and Kang's fine-ish. His body is ripped in half, but that's just, cyborgish body kind of thing. That's not actually Kang. So He-Man hasn't killed him yet, but I do love the fact that you see him just completely going full on smash and grab and destroy, crush, kill, destroy, whatever you want to call it. It's absolutely brilliant. I love this page, where they show Kang's body flying across the screen. Shredder's helmet gets knocked off. And Skeletor's like, he's after us. Wait, this isn't right. I love this page.
I like that Renette knows the duality of what Man-at-Arms is trying to do here. He's not just trying to save everyone. I like that she calls him Duncan. Let's break it down to who you are. Let's talk to you on a very personal level. You're not just saving them from He-Man. You're saving Prince Adam from what he could do to them. And I love that stuff because that's something Adam will have to live with after the fact. And we saw that already. So I love that there's multiple layers of consequence to all of this. And I like when a smart story does that and brings in the fact that that's also going to be a piece.
And also getting Duncan out of there because he's injured.
Yep.
He would never leave Adam. Injured or not, he can't do that. This gives him a reason to leave. And I love the fact that April's going to help him out, but he adds on to things. And you also get a dramatic tale for your camera, So, it's reason why, April's leaving, why he's leaning on April when he needs the help. Again, it is a nice little thing where just, giving him reason why he's doing this, why he's leading on this lady to move, because there is a pride in him. He is this great warrior. There is going to be that little bit of pride. Why would he leave? Why would he run? And I'd like later, even on this page, Shredder's like, hey, no, we have to face our enemies. He may be Shredder, but there is still a code of honor in him. And I like the fact that Shredder's initially initially saying, no, let's fight. And it's the other villains who are like, hey, no, we need to run now. Run now.
Would your evil name be Censor? I'm just wondering.
Actually, that's a good, I was thinking my evil name would be Strategery, but Censor actually.
No, that'd be what you shout. That's your evil cowabunga. But yeah.
I like Censor.
Just wondering. I was trying to mash up the Ninja name with Sensei, and I'm like, oh, Sensei.
I like
Censor. What's the evil version of you? The response to He-Man is a good one. I love when you get a story that's like, okay, they'd have a tough time battling He-Man in general, much less now this souped up version of He-Man. I like that the goal here is not to defeat He-Man. It's to buy time. How do we keep him busy and keep him from destroying and killing everybody? And the Turtles are actually the best suited to do that in the sense that they're going to be able to hit and run, to bob and weave, and it really is that sense of let's just keep him busy long enough for this to wear out. That part was really, really cool. The idea of the sword of Grayskull and being the idea of what it is and what it does, I thought was something that added a lore piece of that. I don't know a whole lot. I mean, I remember from the cartoon when he held it up and, had all this additional power and we saw the sword play in for as an element of power. I didn't remember it being what Shredder describes it as, or Splinter, describes it as, and as Splinter analyzes it. And it may be something I don't know if it's a new reveal for this or if it's something that's been part of the lore. It doesn't matter. I liked its use here. And I liked that it was Splinter, when he was holding on to it, recognizing it as being something of, it's going to, as a source of knowledge, be something different for each person because of what it does. That part really worked for me in all of this.
And it's a good tie-in to what we previously saw in issue 3,
yes,
where Splinter was studying it when Adam was telling his story. Again, adds to the whole metaphysical nature of who Splinter is.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, I cheered when Mikey got the sword, because they're bobbing and weaving, and Mikey picks his shot, steals the sword by the power of Grayskull. Nothing happens.
Yes.
Oh, shoot. I don't know about you, I really wanted to see Mikey as He-Man. I really was hoping that was going to work, because that would have been Mikey of all the characters having the power of Grayskull going through him, and in a way, I'm glad. I'm really glad they didn't do it, but because I love their story and explanation and why and how that was so much better.
Yes.
But tell me a hoss fight between evil He-Man and jacked up Mikey wouldn't have been awesome to see. That would have been great.
But here's what's already awesome. Take a look at that gear he's wearing.
Yeah.
That gear he's wearing with the hat, with the wig on. Yeah. That's something that they do really well in the Turtles is, okay, there's some comedy around, the way Mikey's dressed. But Mikey's still a competent fighter. You know what I mean? We don't lose that piece. It makes you smile, but at the same time, you never lose the fact that in this battle, that flip over it, he's doing, major ninja acrobatics. Yeah. And we just know that the Turtles are, while they're having fun, they are using every bit of the skills that they learned from their master to be competent in this battle. And I love that part. We see a strategy from them. And that part all works really, really well for me. Ninjor showing up on the scene and getting to see Ninjor have his interactions with both Skeletor and Shredder at this point was something I was ready for. I wanted to see this piece because he looks really good. Everything about the design of that character, he comes out looking badass. That is really a good villain design.
That's a villain strut right there.
Yep.
Granted, it's a single page, but you 100% can see him do the strut of, oh yeah, Bodies is playing on the background in my head. I'm hearing all the high pumping, some heavy metal music rocking right here. This is going to be an awesome fight sequence. And I loved one of my favorite scenes in this issue is the one page you have, Kang and Skeletor are like, hey, it's been a pleasure working with you, Skeletor, baddie buddies forever. And what's the first thing Skeletor does? Takes his baddie buddy who's sitting on his shoulder and throws him at the guy. I 100% love that sequence. That made me laugh. That made me laugh out loud, but it didn't take away from the fact that we're about to get a massive fight sequence. It was, again, perfect blend of comedy in with the action that we're about to get. And I loved seeing Ninjor just start destroying them. Because again, he's got the ninja training, but he's also got the magic. He's got the timey-wimey stuff. He's got a lot of stuff that has jacked him up. We need to see him to be able to take out Shredder and Skeletor together.
And that's before he's even juiced himself up.
Right.
He was already on that level. Then we got to see the sword sequence that I mentioned earlier. But we do get to see then the jacked up on the next page, the jacked up version of Ninjor with that dragon looking look to him.
Yeah.
Which is an action figure too.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. This, like the line.
They did good with the action figures.
The line for this is insane. They've really done a great job of putting together action figures. I really love seeing that piece. The page with Splinter after that, and I keep wanting to call them, I keep confusing Shredder and Splinter, name-wise, not who they are. But Splinter is sitting in the center, and we get to see all of these different Castle Grayskull and, the He-Man doing his the different things they're doing to try to keep him busy. April O'Neil and the Sorceress, we're getting to see all those pieces play out. With him sitting in the center and he's meditating around this sword. That is one of the coolest visuals. I love seeing that. It's so funny to see something so passive as what he's doing there, but you know what he's doing. He's analyzing it.
Yeah.
Just, he played out, you mentioned him earlier and brought him up as saying that he's an MVP in this. 1,000% he is. He makes this so cool.
And I'll tell you, the first time reading this through, I thought this page here got me thinking we're going to see Splinter invoke the power of Grayskull.
Yeah.
I was actually, because
you kind of can argue he did, though, Jim. Think about it.
Oh, yeah. He tapped into the power, but I was thinking more of the, by the power, and we'd see a jacked up Splinter. I honestly was thinking that's what was going to happen here, because we had the pages before, when Mikey tried and he couldn't invoke it and Splinter's sitting there. I actually thought, oh man, they're going to do a jacked up Splinter. That's kind of cool. And again, I love what they did with this, that they didn't do that. I think what they did is better than what I had in my head of what they were going to do on both situations. But again, it was a neat, it's the power and strength of this story is that I'm looking at alternate timelines on what they could have done.
Yeah.
This story is so well told that it's got me thinking stuff like that. What if this happened? What if that happened? And again, this is not just a crossover to sell toys. This is an actual true story being told. And I love the fact that this is, a true story, a real deep dive into who these characters are. It's something that, I was like, why, this so exceeded my expectations for this story. I knew it was going to be cool. I knew it'd be awesome to look at because Freddy's amazing, but it was the story being told really surprised me on how, man, this is awesome. I'm loving this. I want more. I want more Turtle stories. I want more He-Man stories.
I do too. And that comes from the fact that instead of, you could have said, okay, this moment needs to happen, that moment needs to happen, that moment needs to happen, that moment needs to happen, and not have a strong story linking all that together. Sometimes when you let the moments overtake a solid story, you then break that down. To me, what's making me interested, and I'm genuinely interested in grabbing action figures. I don't know how many I'm going to grab, but my problem right now is my list is growing as I see cool opportunities in this, and I see like, oh my God, they got a figure for that. That's kind of cool, because I want the evil purple He-Man figure and all that kind of stuff too. I want just as bad. I want stealth He-Man as well.
Yeah.
As you're looking at those sequences when they come through, you don't feel that way as much when, okay, you showed me that moment, but it was awkwardly slammed in there just to have the moment, and there was no substance behind it. You were both fans of pro wrestling, right? And we've seen times where they have a turn or a moment that happens that it doesn't make sense. And it's kind of like, okay, you just did a cheap turn for no reason. There's no substance to it. That is not going to go anywhere. And when there's no logic to it, then you've got to awkwardly try to come back and put that logic in place in a way that never is as satisfying as something you're like, oh, that just happened, and they're going to do something really cool with it. That's what happens with this. These moments were, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, as far as did they have like these cool moments that they had to fit into the story, and then they crafted this amazing story linking them, or was it the other way around? Was it the story organically led to these moments? It doesn't matter. It feels like it organically led to these moments. And that's because there was strategic choices as far as where to plug these things in, so that way they did not disrupt a story that you want to see unfold. When you see all of the heroes on He-Man, and he's coming toward Shredder, and we see him shrink down back into Atom form, everything about that was so cool. I was with you that some kind of power thing was going on, because when you see Splinter, did I say Shredder? I might have said Shredder. Splinter, because of the fact I've been messed up since that whole sequence when they were training together. Splinter is, sitting there in this wonderful image where you see his almost his ka or his rat,
that's his chi energy.
Yeah, when you're seeing it there, that looks so sweet when you see that sequence. I just love when you see that sense of power, and He-Man going back to human form, and being reminded of who Adam really is because of the fact that he used the sword to do that. Right? Am I reading that right?
Oh, definitely.
He tapped into the power of the sword to be able to remind Adam of who he really is. That part was sweet.
It's the power of the truth is the true power of Grayskull.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Splinter tapped into the power of the truth. And I love the sequence when we see the metaphysical kind of battle going on, where it's that light eyes going from Splinter into oozed up He-Man. And that's when he shrinks back down to being actually He-Man again. And I love that moment. Like you, I thought this was a great, just a great, again, usage of Splinter. Splinter is the hero of this story. As cool as He-Man and the Turtles are, Splinter is, for me, has always been one of the star of this story. And I love that they can't take the foot off the gas yet. Yeah, this is a good moment for the heroes, but they still got the jacked up dragon over on the other page they got to deal with now. They still got Ninja all juiced up. And I loved that it was not one of the turtles, not He-Man, who knocks, Ninja down a peg. It is, we get to see our, April O'Neil in sorcerer gear, and because she is a agent of the truth, and that is her strength. That is who she is. She's not a sensationalist journalist. She's always about telling the truth. She's about, and she's going to unveil the light onto Ninja on who he truly is. And I love just that nature. That's one of the things that weakens Ninja.
Yes.
It's not a big, he does get big punch later on, but it's the truth of who he is, what he's after, what he's about, that starts weakening his connection, that starts weakening the effect of the ooze on him.
Yeah, and I like that his truth is he's afraid of himself.
Yes.
That's the ultimate piece of it. It's that he can never change. He can never escape who he is. And that part was really, really well done. I liked seeing them jump in as a team then by the turtle power of Grayskull. I like that they're like, Adam's the one that's going to be able to give us the best line from this whole thing. And it was cool to see them all just like rush in together and do the fight. I wanted to see that mashup. That's a beautiful page, where we get to see the close-up of them, but then we get to see them attacking Ninja.
Yeah.
It was like a very, very well designed. You need that rally moment where you see them doing their own Avengers Assemble kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
That just worked really well. Yeah, it was. And then they're reuniting with Splinter at this point because they were on a different world. So seeing them really reunite with Splinter, where it's out of the heat of the battle, that part was really, really awesome. Everything about this worked really well. I did like the closing sequence of all of this, where Renette's got a choice to make. She's kind of guiding us through this whole thing. So if I'm reading it correctly, she didn't completely close the loop. So this happened for Adam and the Turtles, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is, she could have completely erased all of this from existence.
Yeah.
But she didn't. She let this story happen, partially because they've got now Ninja that they've got to deal with, but it's also part of who they are. It's part of their story now. So this is now continuity. And I liked how each of these characters had their own little bits, that they learned and grew from this story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was neat seeing, with a sorcerer's version of April being the one with the staff over Skeletor saying, and you even got Casey there going, we got you, Skeletor. When Skeletor's getting ready to leave, but because he can't get the teleport with Kang and Shredder, because they jump out of there. I love, again, reunions of the heroes, just these really cool moments, and even like some cross promotional moments of, Casey O'Neill and Mikey doing a high five, it fits, those are the characters I would expect to see. Yeah. All right. Kind of stuff.
Yeah. I loved everything about this. I would love to see another one in the future. This has really been fantastic. That's an example of something where when it comes to the end and you're like sitting here saying, I hope they get the band back together again and are able to do something like this.
Well, they do have the end with a question mark.
Yep. And I like that they left it that way.
And I love the fact that they did have like variations on how this story could have gone.
Yes.
We could have had the villains winning, and we could have gotten the jacked up Shredder. Jacked up Splinter. You have me doing it now, dang it. I do love that sequence where we're seeing Splinter hold up the power sword, and we're seeing him,
Wait, actually, in fairness, you started it last episode.
I don't recall that.
You remember when you kept saying like a Splinter was on the screen? It was actually Shredder that was on the screen. I was like, I asked you about the rat.
That.
I do. I've got. Wait, here's the nice part. It's already been released, and there's a tail of the tape.
That actually is Renette's doing. She went and did.
That's exactly right. I like that. Let's blame Renette and walk away from it that way. I like that. She's our evil villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was with you. I liked that we got to see the different possibilities from all of this. This was a lot of fun. I hope they have another story in them because I'd like to see more of this. I really would. And actually, I hope that the two respective property owners allow them to do another one of these. Because there was a lot that it took, I know, to get this to come to fruition. And I'm hoping that this is success. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, I'm hoping this is successful for the toy line. I'm hoping successful for the Turtles. Whatever. I hope everybody wins off of this because if they do, there'll be an opportunity to do more, maybe with less barriers to making that happen. And this was well worth it. So to the creative who did all this writing, art, everything, it just meshed together. I'm so glad that we get crossovers like this now, where they're of substance and they really feel good. I'm going through and rereading the omnibus of the DC and Marvel original crossovers, and there were so many of those that were really, really good. It's, when you have a great crossover and they really do craft it with care and tell a good story, it's something really special. It's you could have done the cheap, just put them together and it would have sold. Based off of that, when you do something special like this, people are going to want to reread it for years. And this is one of those. It's that category. Man, what a pretty book.
It seems to run on some form of electricity.
RagingBullets.com is our show website. It feeds into X/Twitter. It also feeds into our Facebook fan page. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community, and there's constant posts going on there from a lot of our really good friends on the website who tend to post news articles and blogs and things about that are going on in current pop culture. A lot of comic book news has been coming up, and a lot of, obviously, with this summer of film, there's a lot of information coming out as far as where the future of that's going. So I want to thank everyone there who curates articles. I go there all the time to check those things out. The About Us section of our show website is where you can connect with us on social media and gaming platforms. I'm a regular co-host on Is It Jaws, which comes out bi-weekly. It's a film review podcast. Paul Spataro was kind enough to invite me to be on that podcast. We're having a great deal of fun reviewing films with a number of great guests. So please consider checking out that podcast. We're sponsored as always by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Seglin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Remember, DCBS is a great search engine. Throw in Turtles, throw in MOTU, throw in Masters, and you will see the variety stuff associated with our Turtles, associated with the Masters of the Universe, between comic books, action figures, and whatnot. Some with some great deals, some with some great discounts. So thank you, DCBS.
I did a search this time around for Masters of the Universe. Last time I did Turtles, and the amount of content that's available here for Masters of the Universe is really rich. Everything from the most recent Revelations cartoon to the art of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe trade paperback with the Origins of Eternia. They have the ability to wish list anything that's currently on there. There's also the ability to wish list upcoming releases like the Masters of the Universe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of Grayskull trade paperback. So this is a great way to organize yourself. Like all of us, we have budgets, and we are trying to strategically plan out our purchases. It's nice with these platforms that they have that you can pre-order on DCBService.com or wish list with InStockTrades.com to organize your budget in a way that is manageable. So that way you can do all of the reading that you want to do. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode begins a multi-week look at Superman, and we're going to be kicking it off with the first part of our look at the rise of the Superwoman. In between there, we are going to do an episode on the Superman movie as well. But we will see you next week with Rise of the Superwoman.
Bye!
Sean and Jim decided long ago to do a weekly comic book podcast show. They started slowly, then grew strong. To listen now, you can't go wrong. The Raging Bullets Comics Podcast Show.